Welcome back to jobcasting. Today we are talking about a role that keeps the workplace fair, organized, and protected. Union steward. If you ever wonder what union does, how to get union jobs, this episode is for you. I'm here with Roger today. Hi Roger,
Hi, how you doing?
how are you? Can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Roger Ezra Butterfield. I am a postal clerk and I am a shop steward for the Tampa Area Local 259 of the American Postal Workers Union.
Awesome. Most people hear the word union, but have no idea what it actually means. Can you explain us what union is?
Yeah, so a union is any group of workers that are organizing together to change their conditions and to ensure that dignity, respect, and decent wages at their job are a fact of life. Um, some of the most famous, instances of improvements in American society happened because of the labor movement, the 8-hour day, guaranteed sick leave, and child labor laws all came from the labor movement. And the labor movement was composed of unions. So a union is basically something that works to improve not only the job site, but people's lives overall.
How long have you been with the union? How did you start?
So I've been with the American Postal Workers Union for 2 years. Before that, I worked a number of jobs, many of them non-union. But as a student, I was working in solidarity with a farm worker rights group that organized to improve conditions on their jobs. And after that, I received a position with the National Nurses Organizing Committee, otherwise known as National Nurses United. I was a labor representative slash organizer, sometimes called a business agent. Basically, has the job of enforcing the contract, but more importantly, building up the natural leadership of the union on the workroom floor. So, what that concretely means is nurses themselves are the leaders of the union, and they need to step up to the plate for that. The labor rep helps build that leadership and build that collective action that the union can take to improve conditions. So, at its best, the union would be conducting strikes to fight the unjust conditions at work. In that case, with nurses, a lot of the time, strikes or any sort of industrial collective action at work were around patient safety. Obviously, nurses need to have their rights respected too, but nurses' safety and well-being has a downstream impact on patient safety. So when nurses are working 1 to 7, or 1 to 3 in an ICU high acuity setting, it has a very detrimental impact on patient safety and mortality, overall well-being. So the nurses were often just fighting for ratios, just fighting to have dignity on the job, the ability to just take your 30-minute lunch break, but also to have the staff needed to properly give patient care. So after doing that, I decided that I wanted to be on the shop floor, from the workroom floor, fighting as an advocate on the floor. So as a postal clerk, I do my daily duties of distributing parcels, distributing mail, handling the window, ensuring that the mail is getting where it needs to go. But as a shop steward, I also ensure that management is respecting our rights and not violating the contract. To be frank, a lot of the union also involves just helping to get the mail out despite management. Sometimes management makes it harder for us, and a lot of the times that has to do with staffing levels as well. So that's something I took from my previous experience into this job, that the fight for better staffing has an impact on the public as well, because as the post office, we're not just one other company among other shipping providers. We are the mail provider with a low cost anchor for the shipping industry, and I take both aspects of my work very seriously to provide for the American public and also to ensure that the rights of the workers are respected.
What kinds of jobs or positions are typically unionized?
So I would say the broad stroke of it is the public sector. Anything in the public sector tends to be unionized. Um, the best example is teachers. The largest union in the United States is the teachers union. Um, we also have firefighters, police. Um, Many parts of healthcare are not public sector, but when they are public sector, they tend to be more unionized. In the private sector, we have a number of jobs like healthcare tends to be unionized. Um, we have shipping and logistics. UPS is a good example, organized by the Teamsters. Flight attendants, I believe, are somewhere around 80% organized. That means out of every 5 workers who are flight attendants, 4 of them are union. Um, so those are some good examples. I would say the most famous one is the trades, construction, uh, which involves plumbing, ironwork, HVAC, pipe fitting, all sorts of different things. They're usually segmented by craft, and so there's an electrician's union, a plumber's union. They tend to work under apprenticeship programs. Apprenticeship programs are increasingly becoming a viable alternative for a 4-year degree. They involve the union making an agreement with employers to provide free schooling and education, both on the job and off the job, for people to learn a trade such as plumbing, electrical work, etc. Once they, you know, are in that program, they are able to scale up their pay until they reach journeyman wages, which is more of an industry standard for having some years of experience and some level of mastery on the job. So many unionized, electrical, plumbing, these crafts within the construction industry, they tend to be more well regarded and well respected for the quality of the work that they provide because the schooling is substantial and the job training is also, you're learning often as an apprentice from a journeyman. So those are some of the biggest examples. Yeah.
For people watching, how can someone start working in a unionized workplace?
So the public sector will tend to be a good place for you to go. If you are seeking any sort of licensure or like greater training, the biggest 2 examples that come to my mind are going to be healthcare and specifically nursing. Although there's plenty of other healthcare professions that are, like dental hygienists and, um, physical therapy assistants and other parts of the industry that are in unionized facilities. Um, Sometimes I would also say teaching. That's, education is a good place to go if you're getting licensure. If you have a high school diploma or a GED, I would say construction is a great trade or a great industry to get into, and you can pick a trade that works for you. Um, I would also say that if you are looking to work in a specific industry, try to look at what unions might be representing. Often I'll literally just Google the company name and then labor union, and usually something comes up. But some jobs that you wouldn't expect, can be union. A lot of telecommunications, for example, are organized under the Communication Workers of America and other unions. Some nonprofit organizations are organized under different unions. So usually some level of, being specific about a specific company you're looking for, and then, just searching if there is a labor union attached to it is good. But there's some telltale signs of like public sector tends to have more city level work, especially. And, those are good places to look. It all depends on what you're looking to get out of your career. But yeah, it can also be a good track for, what fits best with, your family, your preference around work.
What are the benefits of working in a unionized job?
I would say the primary benefit is the union becomes a vehicle for changing anything you want at the job. The union is not a vehicle that is going to run 100% perfectly all the time. And the efficiency and efficacy of the union is all dependent on the members. So if you have 100 workers and they're all members and they're all active and they're all fighting together for these changes, you're going to see stuff move. If you only have 5 or so people who are really doing the work and you've only got 20 members out of that 100, you're going to get less out of the company. But the benefit primarily of a union is solidarity. You come together and you can make change happen. Concretely, some of the things you get out of it is economic gains. People tend to have higher wages. They tend to have better healthcare plans. Pensions, which are rapidly becoming a thing of the past, are usually only available in unionized workplaces at this point. A pension, for those who don't know, is a something that provides for you in your retirement. Tends to be a bit better than a 401k, which is more standard in like a corporate environment. For non-economic benefits, which people sometimes overlook, those are also substantial. The biggest one is something called just cause. You might have heard of something called right to work. People sometimes confuse this with something called at-will employment. At-will employment is you can be fired for any reason at any time, and the law won't protect you. With the exception of the state of Montana, I believe there is no state that has just cause protections, which protect you from that at-will status. The exception is unionized workplaces. In unionized workplaces, you have just cause. The employer cannot discipline you, cannot fire you for anything but a real reason that has been explained to you, that has been enforced equally and across the board. I look at this as a way to also protect people's rights to non-discrimination and to health and safety. Because if you work in an environment where you could get fired at any time for any reason, you can't report health and safety violations as easily. You can't report civil rights violations as easily. It's harder to stand up for yourself. So overall, the union makes it easier for you to stand up for yourself, to stand up for your coworkers, and for them to stand up for you. So it ultimately makes it a collective struggle to win, better gains, better benefits, better conditions.
How people can apply for unionized jobs?
So a lot of the time, what you're going to want to do is, find the industry that you want to work in, and find the specific employer. If you are, for example, wanting to work in a unionized facility in shipping or trucking, going to the Teamsters website and finding like a local employer can be good. If you want to work for UPS, that tends to be unionized, for example. If you know that you don't know exactly what you want, but you know that you have a certain educational background, that is means like you could be teaching or doing healthcare work. It's good to find local unions. SEIU, for example, is one that has facilities all over the country in healthcare. And if you just search, some of your local employers and SEIU, it'll come up. I would also say that in the construction industry, you have something special, which is often the employer and the union will have an agreement where they help you get work. You basically go through the union in order to get work. Some of the best of this is something called a hiring hall. We don't have as many of them these days. We need to, bring them back. But dock workers used to work it. And so you used to have, before the union, workers would line up. The boss would select the ones that, he wanted, and then everybody else would go home for the day. Now, if you're a dock worker and you've worked there for 30 years, you're going to get preference over somebody who just joined the day before. And so the seniority protects you and protects your job security. So at this moment, I would say it's just finding an employer that you found out is unionized. Looking for the biggest ones is usually a good deal. Um, you can also organize your own union. That is a harder process. That's something that takes effort and joining together with your coworkers. But we're not going to grow the labor movement if we don't organize. And if you want to organize, there are two organizations I would recommend. First, there is the American Federation of Labor, Congress of Industrial Organizations, better known as the AFL or AFL-CIO. They have an organized section on their website. You can go there and ask to fill out their form to get support. I personally would recommend a second one called the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee. It basically is a volunteer operation to help people who don't have a union win a union in their workplace. And I would recommend them, especially if you're in an industry or a job that does not have a union and is looking to win one. The restaurant industry is very non-unionized for the most part, with the exception of the hotels, where you have a union called Unite Here that organizes a lot of the hotels and food service and casinos. But if you're working at a restaurant and you're like, I want to join a union, I want to fight to have one here, the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee, or EWOC, is a good place to look for getting some initial support. So I would recommend doing your research, talking to any people who might be in a union, and trying to work that way if you want to get a job. But if you have a job and you want to organize, contact EWOC or the AFL to get some support.
All right, let's talk about you a little bit, Roger. What are the biggest challenges of being a union steward?
So the biggest challenge, I would say, is the ones that I put on myself, which is to make sure that I actually do the best that I can to represent the members and to, fight for what's needed. There's always something to fight over to, try to improve. The key is to pick your battles, work hard, but more importantly, work smart. And ultimately, you have to fight sometimes. You have to push on management. Sometimes you have to cooperate. You got to know when to do that. When to do either, and that's not always easy. I would say, a lot of people say their biggest challenge as stewards is it's a thankless job. Members usually will complain when there's an issue, but not necessarily say thank you when you do a good job. My opinion on it is that I'm not really in this for thanks. I do appreciate when people say thank you, you did a good job. But ultimately, what's most important is that if our members win, if my coworkers win, then we all win in the long run. So I think kind of keeping track of that mindset, keeping on focus with that mindset, that's also a big challenge.
Is there anything else you would like to share with people who are interested in unionized jobs?
Being in a union job has been pretty much the best experience in my working life. I worked a lot of different non-union jobs and constantly felt disrespected, whether by actual verbal abuse and harassment by managers or by the lack of decent pay and a dignified, working environment. A union job doesn't mean that you love every moment of it, but that you have something that can help you fight to improve things. So a union is also a team effort. And I think when you join a job and you join a unionized job, you should feel as much a part of the team as the star players, the local president, or the stewards on the floor, or whatever. Everybody has their part in this, and so you join a union. You not only join. It's not like joining an insurance company. It's not job insurance. It's not about having somebody do something else for you. It's having people fight together, fight for a better way of life, and work to make dignity on the job a reality. So I would definitely say fight wherever you are for that dignity. Organize a union at your workplace. Join a unionized workplace and help make it better. Whatever you got to do. This is a fight, but also ultimately a vision for a way that work can be better.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.